So I was just wondering, so how long ago did you find out about this fight? How long ago did prep start?
So, good question, man. It's tricky to remember now because uh, they postponed the fight. Their fight was originally supposed to be November 20th. I think they gave me at least 6 weeks notice. I'm pretty
Hmm.
sure initially I had 6 weeks notice, so I probably had a full 8 weeks once they postponed it to 2 weeks. Um, but yeah, so I had a fairly decent camp. Obviously, things are a little tricky with COVID situations, so it's been a little weird and wacky, like the way that training goes and the timing and everything is a little tough, and traveling and getting all kinds of testing and stuff for different things. So there's all kinds of kinks that normally, oh excuse me, sorry, kinks that normally wouldn't be there. When I'm preparing for a fight, but it is what it is. Everybody's got to deal with it on some level.
Hmm.
I'm sure even more so we're going to have to deal with it when we actually get to Singapore. So, I'm preparing for that. I've had a couple people reach out to me and talk to me about their experiences at some of the one shows and how the quarantining goes and everything like that. So it seems like it's going to be, more of the same in terms of those kind of surprises moving forward.
Yeah, and do you normally dial in sort of every week to that camp? And does the 2 weeks really affect how you train?
Yeah, in a way. So what I would say that makes things tricky, I'm just going to try to look for, I just want to see if I can pump my computer up. Is this, hold on one second. Sorry, buddy.
No worries.
Just want to see if I could stack something underneath the computer because I'm like breaking my neck leaning forward, constantly looking at it. Um, Sorry, could you say that for me one more time?
So I was just wondering how strict is the fight camp? Those 6, 8 weeks, do you plan each of them out beforehand? And does that 2 week delay really scupper things?
So the majority of the planning that takes place, I guess, in terms of like planning, because honestly, like training is pretty similar. It doesn't change. It doesn't change or deviate that much. I guess it's just like a little bit more focused. Like maybe we'll prepare for like certain elements of a person's game or something like that. But overall, like I still show up pretty much at the same times for training and everything like that. And we don't really deviate the amount of training or anything like that per week. It's all pretty consistent. I mean, I do something probably a little different than what most people do. Pretty much for me, I have MMA training and I have jiu-jitsu training, and that's pretty much what I do every day. It's not, I don't like go to kickboxing one day and then boxing another day. And then, I go to a wrestling class. Like, I don't really have any of that, and that's not usually a part of my fight camp. We work on integral skills and things, like we'll do wall wrestling and things like that. Like, don't get me wrong, like we have practices dedicated to certain things. But for the most part, that's kind of covered by the MMA practice. We just do like whatever it is that we need to do that we feel that's an integral skill that needs to be covered. And some days are more striking based, other days are more, grappling integration, and it really just depends on the day. Some days might be based on shoot boxing or whatever the case may be. So training camp doesn't change that much, but what does change, I would say, is like just your mental perception leading up to the fight and the weight cut also. So when I was told, I think I was told right about the same time that I'm being told, or right about the same time that it would have been for the last fight. So like right now I have about 10 days or so
Hmm.
before the fight. I think right about 10 days or maybe 14 days or so ahead of when I was expecting to go to Singapore for the November 20th fight was when they told me, hey, it's going to be delayed 2 weeks. So man, like at that point, like, dude, I'm leaving for Singapore in a couple of days, so your mind is set. It's like, all right, man, I'm going to go fly, halfway across the world, and I'm going to go get into a fist fight in a cage. And like, that's a pretty
Yep, yep.
meaningful event, for your brain, like, I don't know if it's the same. I don't know if people conceptualize it the same way if they've never done it before. Don't get me wrong. Like I've competed, in a lot of different things. And I was involved in a lot of different sports in my life. But nothing quite compares to the feeling that I get from being involved in a mixed martial arts fight. I think like the risk involved is probably like a big part of it. Like, being able to get, at a moment's notice, getting kicked in the mouth and, being unconscious. I think that kind of like leads to a lot more of the worries and stress and that sort of thing. So it's like psychologically something that you're getting ready for all the time. And as it gets closer, you're just, there's like this time clock that you're preparing for. So when that gets reset, it was frustrating. I kind of had to like recalibrate. I had to start eating differently again and then reset the
Hmm.
clock. It's like, okay, you can relax. You don't have to peak right now. You can take like another week basically and relax and then kind of recalibrate and try to, go peak again, next week. So that was a little tricky. But as far as the fight camp is concerned, it's all pretty consistent.
Do you find MMA a lot more fatiguing to prepare for than BJJ then, sort of psychologically speaking?
Uh, yes, for sure. Psychologically speaking and physically, uh, I think in a way it's a little bit of a break physically for my body because the way you use your body in MMA is a little different than the way you use your body in grappling. And even though
Hmm.
I'm doing grappling practices, it's nowhere near the amount that I was doing it when I was just focusing on grappling. So yeah, from a mental perspective, like I said, there's just a lot more anxiety involved, even in practices. I spar a lot. Like I spar pretty much every day. Not the way that most people think. I'm not sparring in a way where like we're all like trying to knock each other's heads off. It's more of like a light sparring where we're trying
Hmm.
to like work on moves and stuff. But yeah, man, I mean, there's still consequences. You're still like at any given point in time, it's like, man, I'm going to get hit with that big punch or that big kick, and it's not something that you want. And it's different than grappling, man, because you're not really sustaining damage over time in grappling. Like in grappling, if somebody works their way into an armbar and I tap, like no harm, no foul for the most part, unless I
Yeah.
like waited too late, to tap. But in MMA, it's like, even if we're going light and, we're throwing punches, kicks, whatever the case may be, and you get kicked, punched, over time, you're making mistakes and the consequences of that is getting hit. Man, over time, like we all have the studies are in, and it shows that like, it's just cumulative brain damage that you're taking over time. And you can try to make it as safe as you want to make it, but at the end of the day, like you're taking brain trauma. So there's something about that makes it a little bit more scary, a little bit more anxiety producing, a little bit more, fatiguing mentally, etc. That than jujitsu is. Jujitsu is a little bit easier to kind of just commit myself to fully physically, and then whatever mistakes are made, and I just get back up the next day and I got to get to it. But with MMA, it's a little bit trickier than that.
Nice. Well, I wonder then about obviously you're super experienced in the grappling side of things. Striking. I haven't seen a lot online about who you strike with and how that training happens. Who do
Sure.
you do it with?
Yeah, so like I had mentioned to you before, I don't really do like a kickboxing class or a
Hmm.
boxing class, and I don't have like classes that I attend from like specialists in boxing, kickboxing, etc. It's not that I have worked with guys occasionally here and there, but it's not a consistent part of my training regimen. John Danaher pretty much prepares me for all aspects of MMA. He is both my striking coach, grappling coach, integral MMA coach. It's a rare opportunity, not just opportunity, but it's a rare circumstance to be in. Where a team, or I guess, in my case, it's mostly me as an athlete, where someone is led specifically by one person in MMA. Usually in MMA, you're getting pulled 6 or 7 different directions by different coaches and told different things. And, you as the athlete are kind of responsible for putting it together. Some of the better guys, maybe they have those 6, 7 different directions they're being pulled, but they have 1 or 2 guys that's a little bit more skilled with MMA specifically, and
Hmm.
they kind of pull that shit together for them, which is, helpful. And that's really important. To have to, as an athlete, put all those things together conceptually in your head, I think is kind of difficult. Because you go to boxing practice, kickboxing, wrestling, and then you're like, all right, well, how do I make this all work together? And it's like, if somebody's not answering that, not at least there to help you figure out those problems, like John is, it's a difficult thing. And then even more so, like, let's say somebody is there to try to help, but then the next guy that you're talking to is like, well, no, I think you should do this. And I think it's a tricky thing, man. I think that's why a lot of people get frustrated. I know I've heard from different people, Mike Perry is an example that's just off the top of my head, of him talking about how he felt as though like having corners was like useless and all these things. And I think there's a lot of like, I think in MMA, there's a lot of coaching that goes on where guys are just kind of like, uh, just feeding off of the names of bigger fighters. And
Hmm.
they have like, they have one big name fighter that comes to their gym. That guy does well. It attracts other big name fighters, and those guys do well. And it really has nothing to do with the coach. It just had to do with like one dude who happened to be super successful and skilled. Right. And then these guys just show up in the corner and they don't really have anything to offer. in terms of coaching advice or even in the training room. And, you know, that's got to be a frustrating experience for some of these fighters. But anyway, that being said, you know, that wasn't really your question. It's just kind of went off on a tangent there.
That's all
but
right.
that being said, you know, John is kind of the central coach for everything that I do. And he does a pretty good job of integrating skills, even though he's most well known for being a jiu-jitsu coach now. Keep in mind that he's coached some of the greatest in mixed martial arts with GSP and Chris Weidman, Rory McDonald. There's been a bunch of different people that have come to him for MMA coaching. So he's very familiar with it. He did a little bit of Muay Thai himself when he was, so he's familiar with striking as well when he was young. So it's not like these are completely, it's not like it's completely out of the blue that he's teaching me, you know, striking technique and things like that.
Yeah, I noticed you mentioned the shoot boxing aspect of it. I know Danaher breaks it down a little differently, right? It's clinch work, cage work, shoot boxing, ground work, something like that. It's four different aspects rather than the traditional way. Do you know if we're seeing an enter the system for shoot boxing at some point?
Yeah, I definitely think there are plans to do something with MMA. I think right now he's got, he might have a DVD for like basic self-defense and stuff. I don't think he's got anything out for MMA. I'm sure he will in the future, as well as I will. I'm interested in making something like that, but I would probably wait until I'm a champion of the division. I feel like it's just coming from a place of strength more than just like being a random MMA fighter. I feel like at the very least, you know, winning the division gives me a good stamp to say like, hey, I kind of know what I'm talking about. Right. So,
Sure.
So it gives me a little bit better footing to produce something like a DVD. Cause honestly, there's not a lot of MMA content out there in terms of like instructional DVDs and things. There's a little bit here and there, you know, you got your Boss Rutan breaking a stool over people's necks, you know, kind of deal. And, you know, so you got some of that. I think Anderson's got some stuff out. But I don't think there's ever been anything done that's been quite as comprehensive as what John has done for like the jiu-jitsu world. So I'm sure people would love to see, you know, what his take in the MMA world is. And I'm excited to team up with him on that in the future.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see MMA taught as a martial art rather than a collection of martial arts.
Yeah.
But
yeah, absolutely.
I guess that's a bit of an aside. To get back to one, I know in previous fights you've said that just having time in the cage is a good thing, or being able to like practice a bit of your stand-up. Are you looking to display or practice anything specific in this next match?
Interesting. So honestly, for this, as I gotten to this point in my career, I kind of made the decision that like, hey, like I'm going to be going out there against like very stiff competition. This isn't really time to just like play around as much anymore. You know, as much as I have fun fighting and everything like that, like I had mentioned, the consequences are somewhat dire. So I don't really have an interest in just playing around and trying to figure things out so much in the cage anymore. I'm going to go in and to the best of the ability, use the skills that I have to win the fight as quickly and efficiently as possible. Not necessarily in a rushing way or anything like that. But all I'm saying is that my mindset is a little different than it was in my first few fights. My first few fights, because everything, I was so green and it was so new to me, I felt as though there was a period of time that I needed to test certain things and to kind of feel how certain things felt. Now, while I have had a pretty hefty layoff now, so it's been a while since I felt those things in a mixed martial arts environment in a cage. I feel like I've got a decent feel for those things that I wanted to feel in terms of like people punching you in the face with 4-ounce gloves and what it feels like to just stand in front of somebody and not stand in front, but, you know, stand up with somebody and really try to win a striking exchange and things. And I feel like I've been there. I feel like I've done it. I'm not saying like I'm the most experienced in the world or anything, but I feel like I've done enough to the point where I've taken those risks already in the slightly less riskier fights that I've had. And now it's becoming we're getting to a point where I don't think that those risks make sense anymore. And we'll take those risks in the training room. And when I go out and fight, we will be taking calculated risks and we'll be smart and we'll make sure that, you know, everything that I'm doing is in pursuit of the victory, not just trying to, you know, figure out if, you know, my new overhand is working out great, you know, like it's,
Sure.
I'll test that stuff out in the training room and, you know, sure. Will there be some stuff that it's like, oh man, I haven't used this in a fight before. It's time to use it now. Yeah. It's not like I'm afraid to do that, but if I haven't done it in training and it's not polished, more than likely you're not going to see it out in the fight.
So I guess it's just about getting in there and winning as efficiently and cleanly as possible.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm not about getting extra more damage than I need to in this sport. I started out pretty late, but like, it can happen. A few bad fights, man, and it changes people, and it could change the rest of your life, man. And I have no intention of taking more damage than I need to. It can still happen. It's still a very real risk that this sport has to offer, no matter how good you are. But I want to make sure I minimize that risk as much as I can.
For sure. Well, to talk about the future then, you talked about the one title. How do you feel like you match up against Than Lee, or do you expect it to be Than Lee when you get there?
Yeah, so I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if they're going to have Thon Lee and Martin fight again.
Hmm.
I've heard some talk about rematches, but not from the organization, just from random people on social media. I thought it was a very close fight. So, I mean, there's definitely grounds to consider a rematch in my opinion. I mean, yeah, it didn't go to decision or anything, but I felt like the rounds that they did have were very back and forth. It's not like I felt like Thon just dominated all the action and crushed Martin. Like if you go back and watch it, like it's very back and forth. There's even times where Thon is very much on his back foot, taking damage and appearing not to have a lot of answers, to what Martin is throwing at him. So we'll see what they do with that. But yeah, I'll be pushing for the title fight for sure. No matter what happens, I'm always going to be looking for that. So I'm hoping to fight Don. I'm hoping to fight whoever ends up having the title by the time, I'm done with this next fight, and whether or not they promote a rematch or whatever the case may be. That's what I'm going to be pushing for. Um, did you ask how I think I match up with him? Sorry if
Yes.
I, yeah, sorry. So as far as how I actually feel as though I match up with Thon, obviously, on paper, he's a much better striker, much more experienced striker, very technical, very sharp. Obviously, it's hard to say. I don't really think we've gotten a great look at what his grappling skills are yet. I don't know if he's really been challenged heavily in that department.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So it's hard to say, that's kind of a
Mm.
little question mark. I've seen some posts and things, I think, of him training with Ryan Hall and things. So I feel like he's trying to cover that base. I just don't know how well he's covered it. I've seen guys like, Wonderboy Thompson, for example, who had almost no grappling background, spend a lot of time working on their grappling background and get very good very fast. And he's, I use the Wonderboy Thompson comparison because it's a very similar kind of style, like that, that in and out, sharp karate kind of style. I look at that and I kind of see the similar things from Thon. So, it's definitely possible. I mean, the times that we've seen Wonderboy Thompson end up on the ground, like he's done a good job of getting back up and kind of scrambling, doing his thing. So it's possible that we see that from Thon too, but it's really hard for me to tell. I feel like in the case of Martin, speaking back to Martin, I've seen that before and I've seen what he can do there. So I know that like, he has skills on the ground. Like I know that there's not like a huge hole there. Like it's like, okay, like, Martin has dealt with adversity on the ground before. So I can say with confidence that I'm not just going to like smoke him like immediately,
Hmm.
that could very well be the case with me and Thon. I don't know. I'm not going to necessarily say that because again, I haven't seen somebody hold him down, mercilessly and like he couldn't get up or something. So I can't say for certain, but I will say it's something that I'm looking to test, that's going to be the first thing I'm going to be concerned with trying to figure out is like, let's see how good you really are on the ground.
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of an unknown at the moment.
Yeah.
And to look beyond that, what's your plan further afield? UFC, you're staying at one for a long time. What are your thoughts at the moment?
Well, man, I mean, I got help. I just renegotiated a contract right before the whole kind of COVID thing happened. Like, I was going to have this is my first fight in a new contract. So,
Okay.
yeah, we'll be here, um, I, uh, I have enjoyed fighting with one and, I enjoy being a part of their organization and man, I have a lot to do here. So I'm not really thinking too far in the future as far as like any of those things that you mentioned. I'm more just focused on the obstacles ahead and winning some championship belts here and beating some of the big names that they have out here.
Hmm.
And I'm going to work my way to the absolute top, man. And I want to be the best mixed martial artist that I can be. So whatever direction that sends me, whatever I feel facilitates the greatest challenges, my ascension into being one of the greatest mixed martial artists in history. That's where I'm going to be going, but right now, man, there's plenty to do here. You know, I got a lot of things to accomplish. You know, I won my first 5 fights. That's awesome. But man, there's so much more work to do. By no means do I feel as though like I am above this organization or anything like that.
No problem. I know we're coming to a close, so I've got more of a conceptual one I wanted to ask you about. What's your opinion on leg locks in MMA? Because I feel like we're getting a few people through at the moment who are really bringing it in, Ryan Hall notably, but they've not become super mainstream. Is it something that will become mainstream? Or is it kind of an overhyped aspect?
It's hard to say. So here's what changed the jiu-jitsu world. Okay. A couple different things. Okay. The first is it's not like there wasn't leg lockers before my team. Okay. There were a few. Dean Lisser was a notable one. Rusamar Parharas was a notable one. I mean, Rusamar wasn't like strictly a grappler, but he did compete in ADCC and did very well. So there was guys out there using leg locks. It's not like we invented leg locks, right? So like it had been going on. But because there was two problems. One, leg locks, nobody really had a great systematic approach to them. They were kind of like one-off moves for people. And some people were a little bit better at them than others and were able to succeed in competition. So when people looked at that and they were like, oh, maybe I can implement that in my game, it wasn't as obvious as the other things that they would implement from a regular jiu-jitsu standpoint, like guard passing or back taking or, takedowns or whatever the case may be. It all fits really easily into that jiu-jitsu puzzle. I think if you look at the Joe Rogan on that John Danaher breaking down jiu-jitsu in the 4 basic steps, take the guy down, pass his legs, pin him, look to submit. All of those other things fit so well into that rigid structure, and the leg locks didn't, right? And so nobody really had at the very least didn't convey, but it didn't seem like they were able to do it in their matches either, have like this super systematic approach. It just kind of be like a thing that they looked for, So we brought that systematic approach, but just as well as a systematic approach, the other thing that people need, I think, to make something to revolutionize a sport the way that we did with leg locks. Another thing that you need multiple people succeeding at a high level with the techniques. So you had Rusamar, you had Dean, Ryan Hall, I don't even think at the time was really, using too many leg locks. He's more of a triangle guy. Now he's using them in MMA, but I'm just saying like back then it wasn't like he was known as like this, crazy leg lock guy. So very few guys. And it seemed like isolated incidents. It's like, that guy does that thing. Okay, he's got that crazy move, that heel hook, When you have an entire team full of people succeeding at a high level, doing a thing in competition, it's hard for people to ignore. They have to go, oh man, we got to figure out how to deal with that. And not only should we figure out how to deal with it, maybe we should figure out how to do it, because these guys are finding a way consistently to be successful with these things. So this isn't just like this, it's a really talented guy and he's got this like tricky move that he does. It's like, oh man, they got something here. So for that revolution to happen in MMA, you're going to need the systematic approach in a certain sense is there. Obviously in MMA, it's a little different, the entries and things like that on a certain level. But the surgence of a number of athletes doing it successfully at a very high level is going to need to happen before I feel as though it will become something that everyone in MMA works on, the same way that kind of like in the jiu-jitsu world, there's very few people now. Like I would say the community of people who's not interested in doing leg locks now is probably smaller than the community that's interested in doing leg locks.
Yeah.
Whereas in the MMA world, that's absolutely not true. There's still a very, very small number of people that have any clue what the fuck a leg lock is. Okay, in the MMA world, there are a few people that are good at it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Marcin Held, Imanari, there's guys that have done it. Don't get me wrong. But again, you need like 2 UFC champions to have been very successful using leg locks repeated multiple times, and then you're gonna start to see people go, oh shit, like this is a very real thing. We need to start doing this. We need to start implementing this. We need to start. You know what I mean? that's the kind of thing that needs to happen before people really believe in it and don't just think it's like a fairy tale thing. There's still plenty of UFC fighters. I've had Gordon tell stories of training with like really high level UFC fighters. I'm not going to call anybody out or name any names, but him be, oh yeah, whatever, those fucking leg lock guys or whatever, they just fall. And then like they're just devastated in the room by leg submissions in their entire world. The world that they believed in, that where like leg locks didn't exist and it was just a bullshit move, just collapses all in one day. And they're like, oh man, maybe there is something to this. And it's hard unless they're all getting that experience, which is, hard to get unless they're training with, us. And even when they do though, sometimes they just chalk it up to, oh yeah, well, it's a jiu-jitsu match, right? Like it's not a fight. So I don't really need to learn how to do this. It's like, this is just for jiu-jitsu. We'll put that in this basket over here. And my MMA, I'm just going to keep doing my pad work and fuck the leg locks.
Yep, that's fair. So it's going to take a few people to be really successful in it and for it to be sort of widely adopted before we're going to know whether
I think so. I think so. I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, we'll see. The only other way is it becomes like this grassroots thing where every MMA coach decides that it's like, but why would they make that decision, right? They have to make that decision for a reason. And the only reason I think they're going to make that decision is if they see a bunch of people doing it really well. And right now, I think people look at the grappling world and the MMA world as two completely different things. Just because something's happening successful in the grappling world doesn't mean, the MMA world sees it and goes, oh yeah, we have to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I always feel like MMA is a few years behind whatever developments there are in jiu-jitsu. Sure. Okay, I think we're out of time, aren't we? Or no more time for more questions, I'm guessing?
It's all right. If you want to ask one more, it's no problem.
One more then, I guess. You mentioned why leg locks have become such a big thing in jiu-jitsu with the systematic approach, and you guys kind of bring them in. What do you think's next in terms of the next big thing in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah. So a lot of what we've been working on and polishing recently, I would say, I mean, we're always kind of rotating different skills. We made a lot of progress. I think a little revolution that happened that people didn't really see, that has already happened that maybe people didn't note or notice was there was a huge revolution on the back. People are like never before trapping wrists and strangling and looking for back triangles. Like I see that all the time in competitions now from lower levels up to higher levels. And that was not being done consistently before. There was a few athletes that were doing it well. And now I feel like the back game has elevated. So that was one area where I think that we made some improvements. Specifically, Gordon became very, very good in that area. But the rest of the team is right there. And I think people have adapted a lot of those strategies. As far as what we've been working on as a team now, we've been prepping a lot. ADCC was supposed to be like kind of right around the corner in terms of trials. They pushed everything back because of COVID and they couldn't fly in, refs and everything. So we've been prepping a lot for that kind of stuff. So one of the things that I think you'll see more and more, and you have been seeing in Gordon's matches, my matches, now we have Nicky Rod, which already came from this background, is this integration of stand-up and wrestling into the jiu-jitsu world, where the normal agreement in a jiu-jitsu match is, hey, you're going to play bottom, I'm going to play top, and you're going to look for sweeps, and I'm going to look for passes. And anybody who's trained with an MMA fighter before, that's a jiu-jitsu guy, knows that that doesn't exist in MMA. But it doesn't have to exist in jiu-jitsu either. It's an agreement that we just make just for the sake of it. I think the main reason we make that agreement is because we go, oh, well, we don't want to go back up in the standing position and then have to look for a single leg or whatever. But that there is an integration there. There's like, hey, man, sometimes when I'm sitting in bottom guard, I can just come up, attack somebody's leg, come up, snap somebody's head down, go for a guillotine. So a lot of those integral skills that help you win a competition like ADCC, which is much more, wrestling based, are kind of things that we've been working on a lot. But some of these revolutions are going to be harder to see than the leg lock revolution. The leg lock revolution was very easy to see because it was so vastly different from things that everybody was doing. The back revolution, like I said, I really think was a quiet one that had just happened over time, and people might disagree with me. I don't really care, but I think it's pretty obvious that we changed the sport there as well. But that's what I'm saying. It's like it wasn't as clear because it's not so different. It's like, oh yeah, they trap the arm and then they strangle. It's not like I don't think people see that and they look at it as necessarily like as groundbreaking as all the different leg techniques and stuff that we do.
Yeah, hearing that a lot about wrestling or stand-up bits. I did notice, I think John putting out a couple of videos on more stand-up based things. Yep. So I did wonder if it was going to go that way.
Yeah, the team's been working hard on that.
Yeah. Well, look, Gary, thanks so much for your time.
No problem.
Best of luck with the fight. Don't get too much brain damage. Yeah, cheers for doing the interview, mate.
Yeah, man, no problem. Thanks so much. Thanks for the opportunity. Have a
No
good
worries
one.
at all. All right, cheers, Gary.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.